What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for March 23rd, 2025. I'm your host, Joe Montgomery. Welcome to a Sunday edition of the podcast. Hopefully your bracket is not busted. I am hanging on by a thread, just barely, but I'm still alive. Let's do some quick housekeeping. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont on Twitter and TikTok. On Instagram, at PhillyJimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont. Continue to spread the word. And don't forget, as I mentioned, if you're interested in seeing any of the videos or pictures or anything from the events that we do, I post them all on my social media as to not get in trouble by YouTube for copyright. Even though I don't think I'm violating any copyright law. I did check into it, but don't want to risk it because YouTube apparently is tough on that. So you want to see some of it, go over to Twitter or Instagram. Typically is where I post them. You can hit me up on Facebook as well. And then be sure to check out Lenny Wagner. He is the author of Playing with the Best, One Man's Journey Through the Golden Era of Sports. Sat down with him last week in the process of putting together the package for that. That will start on April 1st. But Walter French, just an amazing person. Like I said, if you're into history and just specifically the World War I to World War II era, you're going to love this book because it intertwines the history of sports, the history of the country, along with Walter's story very nicely. So go check that out. The information is in the description. All right, let's start with a recap of yesterday's question of the day. I asked you, who do you think the Phillies' breakout star is going to be this year? And everybody was all over the place with this. Nobody really had a runaway total with the votes. Slightly coming out on top was Christopher Sanchez, but a lot of people said Bryson Stott's going to have the bounce back year coming off the injury. A lot of people high on Jose Alvarado. I had quite a few people that think they feel Justin Crawford or Andrew Painter will make a difference for this team at some point this year. And I could see that with Painter looking to be added to the mix sometime in July, which I think hopefully if everything goes the way that it's supposed to with this rotation, it should be a good sort of addition for that to kind of spell some of the guys, specifically Ranger, who tends to wear down somewhat. So thank you as always for participating in the question of the day. We'll have another one here in a minute. There were some roster moves made yesterday, and it appears that the final bench position over the next couple days is going to come down to Cody Clemens and Buddy Kennedy. I think likely they'll end up giving it to Clemens only because he can play infield as well and gives them a little bit more flexibility. But I believe once Weston Wilson comes back, it will be his spot once all the dust settles from that. But it should be a fun couple days here as the Phils wind down spring training and get ready for the opener. There was a nice, fun game yesterday. Didn't watch it, but it did seem as though the Phillies mounted a massive comeback in the ninth to beat the Yankees. So a lot of fun there up at the Yankees spring training complex. Matt Strom did pitch his minor league game yesterday. Looked pretty well. He is scheduled to pitch tomorrow for the Phillies, their final spring training game. And if all goes well, it looks like he will be able to be on track to start the season on Thursday. But that does lead to today's question of the day. And with opening day, it's a different vibe than most of the other sports. Like Eagles opening day is always big, but at the same time, it's sort of just one of 18 or 17 Sundays, whatever it is, hopefully more if they go on a playoff run. But there's something different about opening day. So my question to you, do you have any traditions that you do on opening day? 267-495-8531. That'll get you in. What's your spring training or opening day traditions? We always have hot dogs for dinner. Hopefully, with the weather being nice, we'll watch it outside. But it's kind of like a big deal here for us. But do you do anything special for opening day? Let me know what it is. 267-495-8531. That'll get you into the Back to the Future voice and text line. A little bit of an Eagles news here. I missed this the other day somehow, but they did bring back Patrick Johnson on a one-year deal. He left to go to the Giants last year after being on the Super Bowl team, but did come back. And again, this is another one of those no risk, high reward signings for Howie Roseman. We'll see how it goes. I'm not expecting it to be a needle mover, but I did miss that last week. All right, Flyers fell to the Capitals yesterday 3-2. Got down early, did come back, but were not able to complete it. They still remain tied for that 5th spot in the NHL lottery, and they're right back at it this afternoon out in Chicago. We'll see what happens, but again, here we are checking the standings every day. I don't know why that was so hard to say, but they are tied for the 5th spot in the lottery standings. And then the Sixers are in Atlanta tonight. They are currently a half a game behind the Nets, who lost yesterday, for the 5th spot, and a game up on the Raptors for the 6th spot. So really, they're right where they need to be with how they go. Hopefully they can go down and be competitive, but still come out on the losing end in Atlanta. And the Union bounced back with a 1-0 win over St. Louis. Just a windy day made it tough for anybody to get anything going down in Chester. But the good news is the regulars will be back in time for this Saturday's game against Miami and Lionel Messi. Looking forward to tuning into that game as the Union sit atop the East standings for the MLS. Miami is 2 points back of them, so it should be if you're ever going to watch a soccer game or soccer match, this would be the one to watch on Saturday night. Be sure to check out my friends over at the Clashing Conferences podcast. Lots of great things happening with their Sports Fan Network. I mentioned I was hanging out with some of the guys on Friday night watching some March Madness. But go to theclashingconferences.com. Check out everything they have that you can get involved in. Their podcasts are available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. So go support them. And then, of course, Philly Goat. And this is incredible. My golf shirt is already shipped. But if you haven't checked these out, they've partnered with Double Bogey Down. I got the Philly Frenetic shirt. Looking forward to wearing that for a golf trip I have coming up in a couple weeks. But be sure to go check them out. PhillyGoat.com. They got the golf shirts, but everything else you can imagine. The slides for the pool, the canvas loafers, which are, again, super comfortable. I'm still wearing mine from last year, and I wore the hell out of them, and they still are comfortable. So go to Philly Goat, use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off your order. That's PhillyGoat.com, promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off of your order. All right, today, before we get into today's, I did have to mention, in honor of March Madness, it is also Women's History Month. On this day in 1974, the Immaculata Mighty Macs beat Mississippi College 68-53 to win their 3rd straight AIAW title. They made the movie about them. Little Immaculata College they were the queens of women's college basketball in the mid-70s, winning their 3rd straight title on this day in 1974. So shout out to them. Wanted to make sure I mentioned that. But today, we're going to go back to 1979, and this was a bizarre day in Sixers history. So let me give you the backstory here. Back in November of that previous season in 1978, the Sixers beat the Nets 137-133 in double overtime, or so they thought. The Nets protested the game due to the referees assessing too many technical fouls and giving the Sixers too many technical free throws during a huge blow-up between Bernard King, the refs, and the Nets coach. So they took it to the commissioner and actually won their protest. So, in what is not, probably wouldn't see something like this today, they did a little bit of a double header down at the Spectrum. So they replayed the game starting with 5:50 left in the third when those techs were assessed. So it was completed on this day. The Sixers won that game still, again, 123-117. And then they played the originally scheduled game against the Nets, also winning that game 110-98. Now, that's not even the bizarre part of it. The fact that they played a game and a half, that's fine. But what is more bizarre is in between when that original game was played and the redo, the Sixers and Nets made a trade. The Sixers sent Harvey Catchings and Ralph Simpson to the Nets for Eric Money and Al Skinner. Money, Simpson, and Catchings played for both teams in the same game because of the quirk. So they were on their former teams during the first game, and then due to the redo, they ended up playing and showed up in the box score for both teams in the same game. But it was Eric Money who scored for both teams in the same game. Only time that this has happened in NBA history. At the time, it was the first time it had ever happened in professional sports history where a player played for both teams in the same game. You might remember last season, Danny Jansen did it with the Red Sox and the Blue Jays after suspended game for rain, got traded and ended up playing, but didn't really show up he played in both games, but didn't show up in the box score. Eric Money scored for both teams in this game. Insane. Absolutely insane. Bizarre day. Probably something that we'll never see again. But on this day, back in 1979, the Sixers beat the Nets twice, kind of. If you really, even though the original scheduled start was in November, Eric Money played for both teams in the game. Only time in professional sports a player has played for both teams in the same game and has shown up on the stat sheet. You follow all that? Because there will be a quiz. And then finally today, our Big Five Women's Hall of Fame Spotlight. We're going to spotlight Lynn Tighe from Villanova. She played there from 1983 to 1987. She was a point guard and a 3-year starter for the Wildcats. Still ranked second all-time in their assist leader. Two-time Big East champion, which meant 2 NCAA tournaments. She was inducted into the Nova Varsity Club Hall of Fame and the Big Five Hall of Fame in 1998. After she graduated, she did help and was an assistant coach under Harry Perretta at Villanova. Worked her way up through the rankings and became the senior associate athletic director, the chief athletics administration officer, and served on the NCAA women's basketball committee. So she dedicated her life to the Villanova Wildcats. But Lynn Tighe, today's Women's Big Five Hall of Fame spotlight from the Villanova Wildcats, 2-time Big East champion and a Hall of Famer all around. On this day, back in 1979, Sixers beat the Nets in a game that was restarted from a game in November due to the Nets protesting successfully. Eric Money scored for both teams in the game. And then, of course, the Sixers won their regularly scheduled game against the Nets. So they went 2-0 against the Nets on this day in 1979. 1974 on this day, Immaculata, the Mighty Macs won their third straight AIAW championship. We will have more on the Flyers and Sixers tomorrow, as well as any updates on the final bench spot for the Phillies. But be sure to let me know if you have any opening day traditions or make it a big deal or do anything fun for opening day. Like I said, we do hot dogs, sit down, watch the game, have a little catch in between innings and things like that. So kind of play it up a little bit. But let me know, are we crazy? Do you do anything? Let me know. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for March 23rd, 2025. My name's Jim Montgomery. Go ahead and enjoy your Sunday. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.